Today, we're going to talk about Words of Radiance. It's shorter than I remembered, which is weird to say about these books.
But it's pretty radiant.
You could say, well, it's not glowing. So all jokes aside, welcome. This is Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son sit down and talk about fantasy books. I'm the son of that equation, Zach.
And I'm the father, Jim. We do talk about other things at times as well, but fantasy is what we're here for today. Thanks for joining us. We hope you'll enjoy this conversation. And be sure to let us know, like the episode. And if you haven't subscribed, we hope you will. So Words of Radiance is a story that, it's book 2 of the epic Stormlight Archive. We're assuming anybody who's here today has read it already. This is full spoiler. We're going to talk about whatever we want.
Nice.
We're not going to summarize the whole story because they've read it already. They don't need that.
Good.
When we talked about The Way of Kings, we went for like 90 minutes. And actually, a lot of people have watched the episode. They're enjoying it. But that's a lot. I don't think we'll talk 90 minutes today.
I'm not saying we won't, though. Like, we might. There's a lot to talk about. A lot of things to like. I love this book. It's great.
But we're going to focus on the key elements of the story. A lot of those are things we like. And we'll talk about key things we had issues with. Like, I had an issue. His name is Moash. But we could talk about him a little later.
I didn't have that big of an issue with him yet.
I have to admit, on my reread, I had less of an issue with Moash.
I don't have a big issue.
Better.
I have almost no issue with him in this book, which is wild because he does take some turns.
Yeah. But I kind of almost more felt bad for Moash in this
Correct.
book. Yeah. So my memory at 4 books in is beat Moash, but I felt different here on this book.
At the end of the day, we know where this is going. We're not going to talk about where it's going, but we know we're going to hate Moash. We can give him a little bit of time to like him.
We might end up eventually not hating Moash again. We don't know what book 5 is going to do,
We'll get there when we get to other book conversations.
I have continued, so I'm a little more than halfway through my reread of Oathbringer, and I've gotten more of Moash. And I'm still not feeling as bad about Moash as I used to. It's interesting. So, anyways, this story is primarily focusing on Kaladin, Shallan, and Dalinar again. But Adolin, also gets a little more. He's like the fourth beetle
in the limelight. He was there before. He gets a little more attention. Renarin gets a little bit more attention too. Yeah. That one's really nice to see go in there because he was kind of like the 7th beetle.
And then we still have interludes here in Words of Radiance. It gives us other pieces around the whole planet, and this is where there's more tie-ins to the Cosmere as a whole. But they use the interludes also to introduce, more significantly, the Parshendi in this one, including Eshonai and her sister Venli. Thank you. Not Lenvi.
Are those just interludes in this book?
Yeah. It becomes much more significant in Oathbringer.
Oh, for sure. I just didn't remember if we only got interludes because I thought we got.
There might be some Eshonai chapters. There might be.
That's where I thought we had some Eshonai chapters, a couple.
But still significantly less than what we get of Kaladin, Shallan,
for sure.
Dalinar, even Adolin. Maybe more than Renarin.
we get some Navani time in this book.
We do. I love the Navani time. There's good stuff with Navani.
We get some Sadeas and Amaram
time. Amaram. We're going to talk about Amaram.
We get Ghost Bloods in this book.
We do. We had Ghost Bloods in the first book.
Yeah, but barely. We had the concept of Ghost Bloods. Now we get Ghost Bloods.
So let's just talk a little bit about each of these characters. Kaladin, Stormblessed. He's no longer a bridge crew runner, but he's still recognized as Bridge 4. That's a thing, okay?
It's a frat.
Kaladin is, of course, a budding Radiant, but for most of the book, that's still a secret.
Hush, hush.
His people know about it.
Bridge 4.
Bridge 4 knows the secret, but it's not being spread beyond that, and they're definitely not letting any of those Storm and Light Eyes know. Kaladin really struggles with this because, I mean, he's so afraid if the Light Eyes find out he's a Radiant of any sort, that he's using Stormlight, if he has powers, that it'll be like every other good thing that's come into his life, they'll find a way to take it away. He's really got a thing. And he and Moash share that. They struggle with trusting Light Eyes at all.
There's a little bit of a like self-doubt in there too, even of like, if they don't take it away, they'll give me things that make me take the other things that I care about in my life away.
Now, he has been elevated because of the events of the last story. So he's a captain in Dalinar Kholin's army.
It helps that he's really good with a spear.
Yeah. Again, this has nothing to do with Stormlight. This just has to do with who he is and how he has led men before.
Let's not lead the people astray. It partially also has to do with the fact that Kaladin definitely spearheaded the saving of Adolin, of the Kholin soldiers, of Dalinar, which was Stormlight aided.
But they don't know that.
No, they don't know that. It's not motivated by Stormlight. But to say it has nothing to do with Stormlight is a
picking at odds. Okay, this will be a 90-minute episode. We're gonna cut hairs here, I see.
I'm your son. If I'm not looking for ways to mess with you, what am I doing?
So what we see in this book in Kaladin, I think, is a couple of struggles. One, struggling with his trust issues for Light Eyes, and especially Dalinar and Adolin. You know, he and Adolin have a true love-hate relationship in this book that really leans a lot more into the hate's too strong, love and complete disdain.
They have general prejudices that they need to overcome for their friendship to bloom.
But Adolin doesn't even think he has prejudices. He thinks he's very open-minded.
He does, though.
He totally does, but he doesn't see it. By the end of the book,
it's like Wheel of Time
to see it.
It's like Wheel of Time, having a good white cloak. Yes, you're a good person, but you're still a white cloak. You still have that worldview.
But I will say, and it's something I appreciate, we see Kaladin grow in this story, but we see Adolin grow. We see all of these characters show real growth and progression. But with Kaladin, the other major issue he deals with is a moral dilemma. Because he's trying to be the man, the leader that Dalinar has entrusted him to be.
Yes.
At the same time, he's a friend to Moash. Moash is the one he is connected with more than anybody else in the bridge crew, in Bridge 4. And Moash wants to see King Elokar die because he blames him for the death of his grandparents. Rightly so.
It's not an extent. It's not an unjust, unwarranted blame. It's like, is he the only person to blame? Not necessarily. Is it correct to throw all the blame and just want him dead? Not necessarily. But if you were pointing a finger, it's a valid place to point it.
And because Kaladin has this bias against dark eyes, he's personally been wronged. Oh, Light Eyes. Thank you. And he's personally been wronged many times by Light Eyes. He sides with Moash. He empathizes with Moash, and he wants to support him. But then Moash is going off a deep end, actually into a plot to see the king assassinated.
It's like, I've got this connection to these guys that want him dead. We can do it. It's like, maybe we don't drink that much of the Kool-Aid. Maybe we just like taste it every now and then, because murder's still murder. It's still not honorable.
What we see Kaladin walk into in this story is two conflicting oaths, promises. Okay, he promises to support Moash. He promises to be loyal to Dalinar.
And Dalinar says, protect Elokar.
Yeah,
which is now
we're putting his care in your trust.
The literal opposition of his two driving loyalties there. And he has to grapple with, what does he himself feel is morally correct?
And Kaladin tries to balance the two and walk a fine line. And you can't do that. When two promises directly conflict, you can't keep both. You can't pretend to keep both. It doesn't work. And
if
in
anything,
this
it
case,
just means you break both by trying to keep both.
Yeah. In this case, he's, developing these radiant powers that comes from his bond with Syl, the Spren. We talked about that in the last book. And that's tied to his oath. He said the words, and he has to keep his. I mean, she's an honor Spren. You can't break your word and have everything fine. So we see her deteriorating, this bond between them deteriorating as the book goes along, and Kaladin is really slow to figure out that he's the one doing this.
It's his fault.
Totally his fault.
Like, I sympathize with his problem, and I understand what's going on, but when I read this book, I have a really hard time not being pissed at Kaladin because of what he is unknowingly doing to Sylfrana.
We're supposed to be ticked off at him, absolutely. But it builds to that moment late in the book where he finally decides, I can't do this anymore. I need to do what's right. And he defends Elokar from being killed by Moash and Moash's crew when he has no ability to defend him. So Kaladin is giving his life for the king, who he doesn't like, who deep down he thinks maybe deserves to die, and that the country would be better off without him. Doesn't matter.
I love this ideal. We started in the previous book to protect those who can't protect themselves. And that's great. And everyone can sympathize with that. But this one I love because it goes deeper into something, and is I will protect those who need it, even if I hate them.
This particular phrase aligns very much with my Christian values, because, where it talks about it's easy to love people who love you, it's a whole nother thing to be willing to die for someone who could care less about you. That's the thing. It's a selflessness.
It ultimately points, in this case, to a higher morality. Not necessarily a higher morality of an individual you're following, at least in the case of this book, but in that there is a morally correct action, or maybe it's just a perceived morally correct action, but there is something right to do, and you need to do it.
Yeah. But of course, it gives us that brilliant moment, and brilliant's the right word, where Kaladin says the next words, and bam, goes off radiant. And it's like, holy crap, everything changes. That is such a good moment. It's a reread. I knew it was coming, and I'm still excited for when it happens.
And that's when we get Syl Spear and all that stuff, right?
First, Syl Sword, and then later on the spear, because she's like, oh yeah, you don't know how to use a sword. How about I do this for you?
I mean, he trained a little and didn't really want to train sword at all.
Yeah. But it's so fun to have Syl now be able to manifest as a weapon, and now, all the extra things that he can now do.
Since we're still talking Kaladin and Kaladin character growth, shall we talk about the elephant in the room with this book that everyone talks about? Please. How do you feel about the sentence, "and for my boon"?
And for my boon, what's wrong with that sentence?
Kaladin does great. He steps in and helps out Adolin.
I mean, he didn't read the room at all.
He did not read the room, and he throws it away.
Yep.
I still think he's right.
I think he totally didn't respect dark eye, light eye politics. There's no way.
He didn't respect the politics that refused for him to be allowed to have a say. But ultimately,
the one who messes this up, and he admits it late, is Elokar. He's the one, and that he has said those words shortly before Kaladin defends him at risk of death. He admits it. I could have handled that differently.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's like, do we as a reader read this and go, this is going to go badly? Yes,
totally.
But I'm not wanting to look at that scene from a standpoint of, do I think realistically this is going to go badly? I'm going, is he justified in making this statement? Is he doing what he perceives to be the morally right thing. Mostly.
Kaladin was an idiot at that moment. I'm sorry. He was just an idiot. There's
Well,
no way that was going to work.
That's partially my point. Being moral isn't always about being smart. Sometimes you do the stupid thing.
Now,
for what is right.
The end result of that has some really positive, powerful pluses. Unfortunately, Kaladin then being imprisoned for a while does nothing good for Kaladin. It actually pushes him farther along the bad moral dilemma.
Nor does it do anything good for Syl.
But it brings him and Adolin together. As he realizes Adolin was in another cell, would not be released until Kaladin was released. It's like,
let's be clear. It doesn't bring them together. Adolin's choices in response to it bring them together.
Now, again, there was the humor moment that Adolin was in the Cosmere Hall of Cells, but still,
he's not logged in. It's nice, but it's the thought that counts. He's making the statement.
Yeah, but it also moves the case farther down the road with Amaram, who we'll talk about a little later again. So he had to get all glitzy and flashy, but maybe that did help move that a little forward. Let's talk about Shallan.
Let's do it.
There's stuff at the end for all these characters that I want to save and talk about at the end.
Yes.
All right. So Shallan Davar is a more central character now. She was always a side plot in The Way of Kings. It was significant, but it wasn't really connected to the main core story. Now she's connected to the main core story.
I think that's, one, your perspective on it. Two, how it appears on a first read. On a second read, her side plot, is central to the story. You just don't necessarily know.
I'm not saying it's not central to the story, but she was not connected to the center of the story. Okay, everything else is happening at the Shattered Plains. And then she's off in Kharbranth with Jasnah.
Maybe it's just a difference of where we're viewing. It sounds like you're putting like center of the story being a geographical thing, which to me it's not.
It's where all the stuff is happening, the events, the interactions, the characters. And then over there, we've got Jasnah and Shallan. That's all. That's all I'm saying. And now over there is gone. It's all happening together. All the main players are interacting with each other. And Shallan is right in the middle.
Taravangian's still around doing things.
He is such a minor sub thing, though. We're going to talk. I have him as a key point to talk about later. But he's not interacting with everybody all the time here now. So Shallan is, okay? And where Kaladin is learning about how to become a wind runner, she's learning how to grow her powers as a light weaver.
Oh, she weaves lights.
They're delightful powers, what she has, what she can do. As she discovers more and more to do with them, I'm having a blast reading it. It's also a little disturbing.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if delightful is the word I was going to go with, but okay.
Because, of course, one of the things she's struggling with is, okay, she discovers how she can create different personas. She kind of got a hint of that at the end of The Way of Kings, but she's really leaning into it and playing with it and discovering it. So she's got Shallan, she's got Veil, then she develops Radiant. But it's not just costumes. She's developing entire personas. She's becoming these other people when she goes and does things. And to me, as I read that, I'm like, this is not entirely healthy.
No, in fact, most of it's unhealthy. It's relative forms of coping mechanisms for the trauma that she's faced, the knowledge she's trying to repress. And speaking of trauma that she faces, her ship goes down. Jasnah's been stabbed dead. A whole lot of stuff going on. And she's having to try and figure out her way through the world and then through staying alive and staying connected and a couple of different things on her own.
Well, and the trauma that she's been through, that all gets revealed in this book. The fact that, it's not just the little snippets that we thought we heard about and understood in The Way of Kings, but that she literally manifested as someone bonded to a spren as she kills her own mother in self-defense. Because her mother was going to kill her.
Oops.
It's like, holy crap. This is dark. And she couldn't handle, mentally, couldn't cope. So she shuts it away. It's gone. And then her father covers for her and tries to protect her. And this basically breaks him. And yet it gets to a point where then she kills her own father. Because he's so broken, he's damaging everyone else. And she is carrying all of this gunk. Yeah. Wow. Trauma. Trauma's name is Shalon Devar.
She's got reasons to have both mommy and daddy issues. Like,
yeah. So she would rather be Veil. She would rather be Radiant. Being herself, it's not pleasant.
There's even a certain amount of she feels like being Veil or being Radiant, those are more her. And when she's herself, it's a persona and a mask she's putting on. And to an extent it is, but only because she's not really accepting who she herself is.
Yep. Her powers, interesting as a light weaver, they're tied to truths. So she's growing in her abilities by accepting and acknowledging her past more. In some ways that's healthy for her. She's getting back in touch with her whole person, with who she is, with what she's done. But I still don't see her as particularly healthy. But I like her in this book.
At one point, she and Kaladin have a nice little...
they have a moment.
Well, they have like a couple of nights.
I found it very entertaining where the two of them fall into the chasm and they both think they somehow accidentally saved the other one because neither is able to acknowledge or even believe that the other one has Stormlight powers.
And turns out they both just lived. Everyone else is dead.
Yeah. And they both only lived because they were healed by Stormlight.
I think my favorite part of this, though, is that the thing that keeps them from getting closer in that moment is we find out that the person that Kaladin killed for a shard that Amaran then took, and this whole mess started with, is Shalon's brother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. The mysteries and reveal. And Kaladin was not like doing anything bad or evil there. And Shalon realizes that, but still that's hard to realize this guy that I kind of like killed my brother.
And I think they do address it in this book. I know it's mentioned, but Kaladin doesn't fess up to it in that moment. Like, they don't make that connection to each other. Mm-hmm. I don't remember when they actually talk about it, but I'm pretty sure they do.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to Dalinar. He's continuing his quest to bring the High Princes together,
unite them,
and to restore the Knights Radiant. That's a mission he believes he's supposed to do.
Which is so funny because he is, but doesn't know it.
No, he doesn't. He's been looking for one. He thinks, even at the end of Way of Kings, he thinks Kaladin may be the one he's looking for, and Kaladin lies through his teeth. I don't know what you mean.
No, I'm not.
Yes, Kaladin is exactly who he's been looking for. But since he, doesn't get what he needs from Kaladin, he decides to use Amaram to start the Knights Radiant. I'm like, are you kidding me? I just want to punch Amaram. We all want to punch Amaram.
Yeah. He deserves it. And then some.
But of course, through Dalinar's storyline, we get the understanding that the Void Bringers will be coming back and that we have to figure out how to avoid that. And then we get this countdown thing that's happening, which helps them realize something is coming soon. Like there's an urgency, which drives them to the point where they decide, okay, we need to make a move on the Parshendi. We need to end this war before whatever this bad thing that's going to happen happens. We need to get this done. And boy, do those whole things kind of coincide, but we'll save that for later. That's Dalinar working to make that happen. And he does get some nice affirmation in this book, though, that, definitely his dreams are real things, and more people are getting to hear all the stories. And Sadius, remember, tries to embarrass him at a king's party by passing out all the stories. And Dalinar was awesome. He's like, yeah, I've been dreaming these, but they're not just, I'm not going insane. These are actual visions I've been given. And he leans into it. And when that whole stuff happens at the end, everybody's like, oh, dang, Dalinar was right. So that works out. Let's talk about Adolin.
Okay.
His journey. He gets to do something in this book that he really wanted to do in the last book, and his dad really wouldn't let him do much.
What's that?
He gets to duel. We understand he's like the premier duelist in the country.
Mm-hmm. People have like these vocations that based around masculine or feminine arts or whatever, and masculine is all about wartime and stuff. They don't read. So Adolin's vocation was dueling, and he hasn't been able to do it during wartime, basically, because his dad's like, no. When you fight with a code, it's in battle.
Yep. So they come up with a plan that we're having trouble getting the High Princes to join, to work with me, so let's take away their shard blades. Let's take away their shard plates. And then they'll have to do what we want, because we'll be the ones that have all the power. Now, how do we do that? Well, Adolin can win them by dueling, because that's what they duel for usually. Those are the stakes. And Adolin goes on a mission and starts, winning like crazy, but he has to do it in some interesting ways, because a lot of them just won't duel him at all. Why? Because Sadius is pressuring them. Don't play the colon game. And it leads us to that great scene where, in order to get a prime match that could win a lot of good stuff for the house, for colon power, Adolin promises to do a duel in a special way. I forget the exact term, but he didn't tie the terms down enough.
He basically says,
at disadvantage,
I will duel to
whoever
whatever standards you choose. However,
and he ends up having to go like 4-on-1.
I think it's 5-on-2 in the end.
Well, but it's only Adolin, but then Renarin comes in.
I think the two of them are in there from the start, I thought. Maybe I'm just wrong.
I didn't think so. I think Renarin comes in to try to help. It's been too long since
I've read this scene.
But Renarin struggles to do anything in fighting. He just can't. And we find out why by the end of the book. Because it turns out, we'll just jump to that. It turns out Renarin's a Radiant too. He's developing it. So every time he holds a shard blade, he hears screaming in his head,
Yeah, it turns out that's a thing.
Yeah. Adolin doesn't hear the screaming, meaning Adolin is not going to be a Radiant. At least not yet. At least not yet.
He's at least not like bonded to Spren in some way that have already got Radiant adjacent.
But we've got Adolin and Renarin getting basically beat up with ridiculous odds. And it's pretty much like the other guys are cheating. And Kaladin jumps in. No shard blade, no shard plate. He's got a stick. And he takes them to task.
Yeah, he turns the odds.
And he does it without even using much Stormlight at all.
He uses a little.
Just a teeny bit, but mostly it's just him and his skill.
He's making a point to not want to draw attention to that still. He's still using some of his attention in this fight to be like, okay, don't use too much Stormlight. Don't let them see you glow. Don't let them see you glow.
Yeah. But the whole focus here, Adolin's progression in this story is growing up a bit. We see him moving away from just, man, I wish I could be like everybody else, and focused only on fashion and wine and enjoying the high life, to actually getting serious about the needs of the family, the needs of the country, taking on his role and maturing more into the kind of future leader that he could become.
Yeah, he does a lot of good thought, like fully thought through actions through this. He has some fun romancing arcs through this a little bit. And I know we're not talking about the climax, but he does break the trend of doing things better and more thought through at the end in a great scene.
Sorry, I had a "we're not that kind of podcast" moment when you're talking about romance and we're not going to talk about the climax. Sorry.
Get your head out the gutter.
Anyways, we've got this other guy we got to talk about now before we can talk about any of the other key points.
The other one on the cover behind you?
This is where we've no.
Oh,
I'm not
other
thinking about talking about him yet. We're gonna save him for the end.
Oh, okay. I like him.
But Amaram.
Oh, that guy.
Because we didn't get him in the main narrative in the first book at all. He shows up here in this book, finally arriving at the Shattered Plains, wearing the plate that Kaladin had won.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't even recognize Kaladin. And his poop doesn't stink. That's the idea. This is the portrayal Amaram has. He is just this holy, awesome, excellent warrior who does everything righteous. And Kaladin is having vomit urges from the moment he sees that this guy's back.
Which, to be fair to Amaram, at face value, he seems to be what he presents. He does all these great things. He does hold with honor to a certain extent. He does follow Dalinar's kind of thought process and teachings as well. But he's a little more Sadeas aligned in some of these things, and we know some things through Kaladin, and more, it's like, look, Sadeas is a bad guy. But Sadeas is a bad guy because his vision for Alethkar is different than Dalinar's. They both are still honorable to their own codes, but they have very different opinions on things. They do things very differently, and Sadeas is shady. Amaram wouldn't know honor if it punched him in the face.
And yet he thinks he's very honorable. He's just answering to a higher purpose. He has a mission that's above everything else.
Amaram is lucky that honor is dead.
His mission is above morality. That's how he sees it. Yeah.
And it might have been how the former king saw it.
Maybe. But I appreciate how we do get at one point, I think it's Dalinar who says it, he finally gets the sense that Amaram is maybe just a little too good. If someone is trying to look that good,
nobody's that clean unless
they're probably hiding something. And so Kaladin didn't trust Dalinar enough. Dalinar had already put into action, before Kaladin asked for his boon, he'd already put into action a plan to allow Amaram to hang himself if he truly wasn't playing on the level. And that does play out eventually. We get to see it in the end that, he catches Amaram in a lie.
That being said, Kaladin has his reasons for mistrusting Light Eyes and not necessarily giving room for it. And you give someone like Amaram enough rope, maybe they manage to find a way to wiggle out of the noose before it's fully.
But this story turns a corner for Kaladin in that when we get to the end of the story, he is finally over his absolute rejection of Light Eyes having honor.
Which is really good because he's going to be stuck being up Light Eyes pretty regularly.
Because let's talk about our next key point. The Knights Radiant are back. Okay, Surge
We're
binding
back,
is something that's a part of this story. Now, technically, there isn't, Kaladin said the first words, and that didn't make him a Radiant yet. That just put him on the path. But when he says the second words, okay, now he's fully Radiant. Doesn't mean he's done growing. There's still more words to say. There's still more to do. But he's able to manifest powers in ways that he couldn't touch before. He's gone next level, and he's got Syl as a shard blade or whatever, shard stick, whatever. And he can do those things now with his powers that put him up to match with that guy.
Seth Sun Villano.
Who is not a Knight Radiant at all.
But he's also not evil.
Well, we learn in this book that he is truthless because he believed the Knights Radiant were returning, and he was told by the leaders of his country, you are wrong, this will never happen,
which
you need to reject that statement, and he wouldn't, and so they banned him as truthless and kicked him out.
Weird, cool custom that they basically go, hey, we as a society have decided that your opinion is no longer valid. So here's this rock. Whoever holds it gets to tell you what the truth is now because you don't get to decide what truth is. And it's so weird because in a way, Seth, who does awful things, we saw it previously in the first book, we see it through this book. He's one of the most honorable characters in the series so far because he sticks to his word and his thing. Doesn't matter if he thinks it's right or wrong. The only truth he's allowed to accept is that of whoever's holding the rock.
Yeah. We get to discover in this book that he has his powers because of the shard blade he has, which is not a shard blade.
It breaks rules. It is an honor blade.
And holding it, having an honor blade, gives you the powers of a Radiant. There's no oaths involved. You just get the magic powers.
There's a couple specific things of like, there are different orders of Knights Radiant. They have different powers. Depending on what honor blade you're holding, you get the powers of that, basically Herald. Cool.
Yeah.
But there's a couple other things that set them out. It's a little bigger. It's a little cooler. It doesn't require 10 heartbeats to summon. It's just there.
Neither does Syl, by the way.
Neither does Syl.
So we find there's something wrong with those other shards. The other shard blades. Does Syl tell us in this story what's wrong with those? I think she does.
I don't know. I know we find out next book.
I think she tells us already in this one. But, yeah. Better not spill the beans.
I don't know if she realizes in this one. That's where I'm like, she spends so much of this book forgetting herself.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But so, yeah, now Kaladin can do what Seth can do. And he could already do some of it earlier in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else knew it, but Kaladin did to try to, oh, this guy showed up and we have a fight in the sky and all that. And that really troubled Seth. Because like, wait a second. How can somebody else be doing this? I was told these powers weren't coming back. And so there's some real work that goes on by his handlers to try to get him to not focus on that because they could lose him.
If he is proven right, then it means all the horrible atrocities that he did are now on his hands again.
Yeah.
Because he's not truthless. He was right. He shouldn't have been doing
that stupid stone, he's going to throw it away. We're not going to be able to control him anymore.
And maybe he'll turn his blade on those people. Who knows?
And of course,
Who knows what he'll do?
When I say his handlers, at the root of that, we learned at the end of The Way Kings, Taravangian.
At least
behind that. Again, we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But yeah, we get an epic battle, which we'll come to at the end. We get to see Kaladin and Seth go all off mano a mano, and it's awesome.
We see a couple cool things that I think are important to note. Most notably, Stormlight can heal shard blade cuts.
Yes, that's huge.
We also see, and I think this is really important, we see the entrance of a favorite character of mine in the Cosmere. I think. I don't think that's at the start of the next book. I think it's the end of this one. I need to actually look now.
No, it's the end of this one.
Okay.
It is. But you'd have to mention something we haven't talked about yet. The result at the end.
So So we'll
but it's coming. That is the end of this book. Yeah. That's like the very end of this.
It's like very, very endish.
Last page. So now it's time we got to talk about the Parshendi a little more.
Yeah.
Okay? We get these pieces of the Parshendi and we get to learn why the Parshendi had Gavilar assassinated, King Gavilar, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, whenever it was. And it's because Gavilar shared with Venli, who then shared it with the leaders, that he was excited. There was a plan. He was going to help bring back their gods.
I think it was shared with Eshonai. I
thought it was Venli. Maybe it's Eshonai. Anyways, that information gets shared and they're like, no. Yeah, maybe it was Eshonai. But no, we learn these Parshendi are all that's left of the Parshendi, who once upon a time were connected to gods who were controlling them, who basically used them in a manner that was very not good, and they escaped from that and rejected their gods. And they've lived a very simple, calm life for centuries.
They effectively left the slavery of their gods to find peace and freedom.
Yes. And so they don't want their gods back, and so they kill Gavilar as a desperate measure to prevent that from happening.
Notably, because they saw he was probably going to succeed.
Sadly for them, right from within, they're corrupted. And that's where Venli comes in. Because Venli has a friend. And we get to meet this Red Spren. This Spren that's been helping her discover other things that could help them finally win the war. And long story short, we end up with the Parshendi turning into Storm.
Yeah, they take this new form of power that they had previously, when they were enslaved to gods. Yep. And it's a desperate attempt because they're like, yeah, they're going to come into the Shattered Plains and wipe us out. We need to do this. Except when they do it, it also messes with their heads some, and they're like, yeah, we need to do this. And
it's a devastating loss for the Parshendi. Because, we're going to do it's how we're going to save ourselves. And yet we see their actions late in the book, and we hear it communicated by Relaine, who was the Parshman that was part of Bridge 4, but was really a Parshendi spy, who then comes back. He comes back to Bridge 4, comes back to Dalinar, and he says basically, all my people are dead.
Basically.
And we literally see that scene where they take on this new storm form, and everyone who was not comfortable with that is killed. Because nope, there's no place for you if you're not becoming like
run away kind of thing, and into where they're going to get flooded and die.
Yeah, it's like, wow. The Shattered Plains comes into play here then, because I mentioned Dalinar needs to get us to where we believe the Parshendi are so we can finish this war, but it takes longer to get there than they would hope. Kaladin does not come with.
Nope.
Because Shallan and Kaladin had that adventure down in the
chasms,
and Kaladin doesn't fully heal from it because he and Syl are not quite clicking. He's not able to access his Stormlight power anymore. It's gotten that far with his moral dilemma, so he has to try to heal slow, the real way, and therefore he's laid up. He doesn't go with the army into the Shattered Plains, and on the Shattered Plains, when they finally get together, it's this big climactic event now where the transformation has taken place and the Parshendi bring a new storm.
And we get a clash of a high storm and this new Everstorm.
What's so significant about the Everstorm?
Well, it comes from the wrong direction.
That is huge. We've talked about it in the last book. The whole culture, the whole continent, especially the eastern half, is built in a manner to withstand eastern storms, east to west storms. And now you got one blowing the wrong way.
Everstorm comes west to east.
But this event on the center of the Shattered Plains has two storms colliding.
Going in opposite directions very violently, in the middle of a massive melee.
Also, the Everstorm flings lightning and devastatingly destroying whatever it hits. That's not fun.
Yeah, there's a number of bad things about it. And we haven't even gotten to the worst of it in this book.
Right. So that's a heck of a thing. And in the midst of all that going on, back at the camps, Moash and crew are trying to kill King Elhokar.
Yeah, Dalinar and Kholin and crew are all out, so this is going to be the perfect time.
That's right. They let Kaladin know. Moash lets him know. And hey, we don't even need you to do anything, as it turns out.
You don't have to kill him.
We just want you to know it's going to go down now. So just sit back, relax.
You just stay out of the way.
It'll be over before you know it. And Kaladin can't do that. Finally, we're like, yay, Kaladin! A little too late, buddy, but yay, Kaladin. He drags himself up to the king's quarters. He leaves a trail of blood because his wounds, his sutures burst open as he's trying to get there. And we've got that big moment where he defends Elokar, and then he ends up going radiant. Saves Elokar, but then also realizes, and I don't exactly recall how he realizes, there's something bad happening out on the Shattered Plains.
Yeah.
Do you remember how he realizes that?
Not even a little at the moment.
Yeah, I don't. But he realizes the critical need to get out there. And so he flies there. Just zip.
Which,
and he makes it in time to face off with Szeth.
I think this is one of the key moments to mention. Kaladin can't fly.
No, he can't.
He falls with style.
Yes, he falls the direction he wanted to go.
He Buzz Lightyears his way through this book at the end.
And, he takes a bunch of gemstones to do it. But when he is out there, there's a high storm.
So he's fine. He
can do whatever he wants because he's constant recharge. All this Stormlight all over the place. That's not a problem. He duels with Szeth. They go all crazy all over the place, but Kaladin wins.
It's an awesome entrance moment. Szeth has just been sending people into the sky to die.
Yeah, that one High Lord just gets sent up until it runs out, and then all the way and splat.
So I'm like, Dalinar up, and Kaladin comes down with him. You sent him to the sky to die. The sky is mine.
Right? That's a moment. That's an entrance, and it's also an announcement. Dalinar. Yeah, I was who you were looking for. That's pretty much what it
rolls with it pretty well.
He does.
Meanwhile, on a different part of the battle, his soon possible daughter-in-law is working with one of his other sons to, open a secret portal door to an ancient city.
Yeah. Which, in the end, they do. So, big revelations at the end of the story. They find a way to Urithiru. Trying to say that correctly. Urithiru. Okay. The ancient city of the Radiance. Okay. So they managed to get there, and they get everyone who's left of the army there. A lot of people died, but everyone who was left, they transport them all.
Speaking of people who die, Eshonai of the Parshendi also goes plummeting off a chasm.
We don't know she's dead in this book.
It's presumable that she's probably dead.
Probably. Kaladin does not get transported with them because he left fighting Szeth.
Yeah, they have their own fight. It's like he got a war death after the death. We got our own fight.
When he comes back after the death, everybody's gone. He's like, where'd they go?
Where'd they go?
Because he doesn't know the whole plan. He was laid up back there, He manages to connect with them eventually. The two last really big things that happen in the story are when they're at Urithiru and they've been exploring this place, and it's so cool. Well, there's really three big things that happen. They're exploring for a while. One is Dalinar going to the top of the tower and bonding the Stormfather. It's like, whoa!
Cool, Dalinar gets to be a Knight Radiant too, kind of.
Yeah, the Stormfather is a Spren, but he's a little different than others. He literally says to him, don't think I'm going to be hanging around with you all the time. That's an interesting relationship. So there's that. We get the bit with Szeth, who was killed with Syl. Okay, he's dead, but not.
Yeah, I don't think he gets killed. I think he gets his hand, it's chopped off or something, and the honor blade falls or is taken or something, and he falls out of the sky.
He was stabbed right through the center. So his legs should be gone kind of thing. It was like that. He wasn't through the eyes, didn't go the black eye thing.
Not he's dead, but he shouldn't have a way to be alive.
Right. And yet he is brought back. And he literally thought he was dead. And the guy says, well, there are things that can be done. So he was dead based on what everybody else knows that is capable of being done. But the person who brings him back is
a herald.
One of the insane heralds. We'll learn more about that. But this is the one who tries to kill Lift earlier in the book.
We don't.
Nail?
We do see that in an interlude.
Yeah.
Nail, yes.
Nail, yeah.
At least that's one of the names he goes by.
Right. And Nail has a purpose for him. He says, "You are one of the most honorable beings I have ever seen."
Which is
Have
true.
this. And what does he give him?
Nightblood! Which I don't think we necessarily get the name of it here, but
that's
what it is.
But when the sword talks to him, we're like, oh, hey, I didn't catch this the first time I read it. I totally can see it now.
The really important thing to note here for anyone who does know anything about Nightblood, Szeth isn't evil. And it's confirmation.
Is to destroy evil.
Yeah, it's confirmation that Nail's kind of right. It's like, yeah, he's done horrible things, and yeah, he's struggling with all this, but he is honorable. He just was upholding to a code that was making him do really, really, really bad things.
Yeah.
That doesn't make his actions good. That doesn't necessarily make him good, but it does mean he's not just evil. It's more complicated than that.
The last thing that's really big that happens, and there's still a couple more things I want to talk about, but the last thing that's really big that happens in Urithiru, and it involves Adolin. You want to talk about that scene?
It's not a very long scene. It's like a page and a half or something. And it's just a chance meeting, Adolin and Sadeas in a hallway, and then there's no more Sadeas. Knife to the eye. Neither of them even drew a...
They get into a fight. They just go at it. Bam.
They didn't even draw their shard blades. Didn't go anything big. Just, it's murder.
But at the same time, Sadeas was trying to kill Adolin. I mean, when they're fighting, they're both going at it. I don't think Sadeas would have just hurt him a little and would have left him there.
But it definitely is. Adolin's responsible. He starts it.
Adolin could have just hurt him badly and left him.
Adolin could have walked away.
Yeah, but not once they were fighting.
No, but who throws the first punch kind of thing? Adolin does.
Sadeas had it coming.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not saying Sadeas doesn't deserve this. It's still murder.
So, no more Sadeas. And most of us reading were like, whoop, 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 whoop.
Oh, absolutely.
But there will be ramifications. You don't just kill a high prince like that and expect everything to be fine.
He does realize that, like, pretty much immediately. He's like, crap.
Yeah.
I need to hide this as best I can a little bit. Need to hide the evidence to me a little bit. And then goes, I don't regret it, though.
Yeah. The other thing that's definitely necessary to talk about is Taravangian.
Yeah.
Because we do get more information on Taravangian, and we learn about the diagram.
Because we saw at the end of the first book, death rattles and this whole mess, that Taravangian's got something going on. And it's like, what is he doing?
But it's not just Taravangian's thing. It's morphed into this a whole bunch of people who are working on behalf of the diagram. It's like a cult of the diagram here.
And I think we do learn the origin of the diagram in this book, right?
We do.
That basically, for one reason or another that I don't remember if I can talk about yet, Taravangian had a really, really super, super, super smart day.
You can talk about it. It's explained in this book. He wanted the power to save his people, to help his people. And he felt he didn't have it. He didn't have enough. So he went to, what do they call the night? What do they call her?
It's a great
the
question.
Old magic. The what?
That's a great question. It's
the
Night Watcher?
Might be the Night Watcher.
Anyways, I have the book in front of me. I'll find it in the glossary.
And he goes and he asks for something. And he's given, and you can do this. It's a thing. But you'll get a blessing and a curse. That's how it always works. And he's given the knowledge to be able to save his people. The curse, though, we learn, is that for as many days as he will be smart, he'll have as many days being stupid.
And it's not a one-to-one, you're super, super smart this day, you're super, super dumb this day. It's a sliding scale of number of things. And he one day had so smart of a day that he stumbled his way into the Foundation series.
Yeah, he's able to program out all the things that are going to happen over the next dozen years and all the things we need to do to save the world.
He did the math to plot the course with some variants of like, there's some unknown variables. If it goes this way, then we need to go on this path. If it's this way, we need to go this path. These are the things to how to correct this.
What's amazing is he was so intelligent that day. Language wouldn't serve him. He created his own language, his own code to write the stuff down because using the language that existed was too cumbersome.
And so now there's this whole team dedicated to studying it, trying to make sense of it, following it, and to a certain extent, testing him each day to see if he's smart enough to contribute in any way, shape, or form to that. And at certain levels of smartness, he's allowed to look at it and maybe make small changes to it.
He's still a king. So the test is also to determine what ability does he have to rule.
What's he allowed to do today?
And he's the one that devised the test.
Oh, absolutely.
On one of his average days. Okay, he was like... Because, they came up with the test because of one of his really smart days where he was so smart, he decided that anybody who was stupid, we should just kill because that's a better way of helping society. And they're like, no, we can't do that. What? And he's showing the more brilliant you are, the less morality matters. There's an object lesson. But we learn about how all this works from one particular episode in the book when he's trying to find out when will he be as brilliant again as he was when he first wrote the diagram. And the mathematical calculations that just regular people can do show that, the odds of that ever happening again are next to impossible. None. Because the odds of it happening the first time were next to impossible. So it's probably never going to happen again. Anyways, but it's led to this whole group of people who are all working to follow the diagram to kind of help things go into place. And it's a whole thing. Is Taravangian a good guy or a bad guy?
Yes.
He's complex. We can definitely say that.
He's one of the more complex characters in this book.
He's done some really horrible things.
And he seems like he will continue to be interesting and complex, at least at the end of Words of Radiance.
Yeah. That's pretty much the book. This is a book that has a lot more happening in it than The Way of Kings. I enjoyed Words of Radiance much more. Words of Radiance. It's just, there's more tension, there's more activity, there's more, and the ending is so much bigger.
Well, what I see the first book as is a lot of world building and establishing characters.
Mm-hmm.
And we have action, we have things that move and story, but we really need to establish where are these people starting, what's going on, what is with this world. And we can't go too far because we need a really, really good picture of that so that Words of Radiance can be a book of development. Characters develop, the story develops, we continue through these themes and get to see growth.
Yep. Where do you rate these? Way of Kings or Words of Radiance in your preference? Which one do you like better?
I liked Way of Kings. I really did. When I read them, at least, Words of Radiance was higher.
Yep. Me as well. Not everybody. I know Jason, Gentle Giant, on our Discord really likes Way of Kings better.
For me, I think it comes down to everything else being equal. Words of Radiance starts to open up to the bigger things of the Cosmere better, and I'm a sucker for that.
You are. Yep. All right, that's all we really have to say about this then, right?
I'm good. We didn't go 90 minutes, but we went 60.
Or like about an hour, yeah. Again, that reminder, we would love having you join our growing number of subscribers. We're not that far from 2,000 subscribers now. We haven't hit 1,900 yet, but we're moving that direction. Hey. And then 2,000 is not very far beyond.
My next party is when we hit what year we're at. Can we do it while it's still 2024, or will it be 2025? We'll see.
Oh, yeah, that'd be fun. But again, comment box, anything you want to say about Words of Radiance, we'd love to hear it. If there's anything we talked about that you have a very different perspective on it, let us hear it. We love
free to let me know that I am wrong, because chances are I am.
People point out that Zach is wrong. It's fun. All right, thanks for watching, everyone. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.